Mr. Chairman, we are live.
Okay, we'll call a meeting to order, and Diana, if you'll take roll call, please.
Okay. Representative Andrew,
Here.
Representative Brown,
Here.
Representative Connolly, Representative Harshman, Representative Nyman,
Here.
Representative Newsom, Representative Obermuller, Representative Summers, Chairman Paxton.
Here, and I think Representative Harshman will be here shortly. So. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome committee, and welcome to all of you out there and listening to us virtually. We're going to continue our discussion on House Bill 63. And we've had some developments here since we met last that probably going to change the testimony. So what I'd like to do is to invite Representative Brown, Vice Chairman Brown, to go over the proposed amendment that he's going to propose today, because I think it'll have a drastic change in the kind of testimony we take, and maybe a little out of order, but I think serve the purpose better. So with that, Vice Chairman Brown, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen, especially the committee, but also in the public. I do want to thank those that were here and came through the amount of time that we had on Friday, and then continuing it into today. I think we'll probably have some information and some people out on the internet that are still looking to testify. And I know I heard from a few that were interested in testifying today as well. So I think we will get to those. But one of the pieces of information that came from this, as we've been hearing and as we've been going through this, is we really want efficiency. And there's been some consternation about where that efficiency is found. And so unfortunately, in my mind, the efficiency is not felt to be found in the Department of Education by the majority of people that have been testifying against this particular bill. They felt that the Department of Family Services would be a more appropriate location for this particular location to be held. So in that process of working through the amount of people that we've talked with and all the stakeholders that are involved, we have certainly heard from our fair share of individuals across the state that have their opinion one way or the other. What I will be proposing, Mr. Chairman, is an amendment to take this to the Department of Family Services. And there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, it allows both sides to determine inefficiencies and report back at a different date. We don't actually, in this amendment, will not have any reporting requirements, but I highly suspect that this will not be a long drawn out process that just ends up never seeing legislative review again. I would imagine that we probably end up seeing legislative review of this again, but it allows both sides to determine those inefficiencies that may or may not be found. And it may ultimately be because of one agency or the other. So that allows us to help us with that. But it also places all of these programs underneath one particular agency. And instead of this being underneath one agency, or three different agencies with the Department of Family Services, the Department of Ed, and the Department of Health, this moves everything underneath the Department of Family Services, ultimately with the only portion of being the responsibility being still held in the Department of Education because Part B is required. I do still have some reservations on this personally, but this is how policymaking works. This is the sausage making, if you will, of policymaking, that when you have a good compromise, everybody walks away from the table upset because nobody got everything they wanted. And so ultimately, that's what this amendment is proposing to do, Mr. Chairman, is takes everything away and it strikes all of the language inside of the amendment, strikes all of the language regarding anything to do with the Department of Education, and replaces it with the Department of Family Services and places all of that in there. And then, Mr. Chairman, I also emailed a secondary amendment that I will be moving once we go through here. And this is just a little bit of a cleanup amendment to make sure that we understand that no county health nurses are affected by this move, as the current language leaves that kind of a little ambiguous, unfortunately. And so it was caught by the governor's office that they would prefer to make sure that we don't have any ambiguity in this bill once it leaves this body. So that's the amendment in a nutshell, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Brown. I think what we'd like to do is to continue our dialogue from last Friday and perhaps start with the people that are here in the room that may have traveled or would like to testify at this time. So if there's anyone here in the room that would like to testify, understanding what this amendment will do to the bill, this would probably be appropriate time for you to come forward, if you would, please. You come forward, please. Please introduce yourself and tell us who you represent.
House Education Committee members. Can you hear me?
Now we
Okay,
can. That's
sorry.
better.
My name is Tricia Wynot, and I am the Executive Director of Stride Learning Center, the Child Development Center in Laramie County. And that is a bit of a jolt, Representative Brown, to have heard the amendment change. So if I may, just a brief few minutes, go ahead and talk about what I feel very passionately and strongly about. And then I'd be happy to answer any questions. And then I'll be on my way so you can get down to your important work. So first of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity. I am very much in support of House Bill 63. And I am going to think long and hard and pray on with this amendment, what that means for us. I began my career in early education in 1992 at Stride Learning Center. So I've been there a very long time. For decades, I have been around hearing about the parts of governance and oversight. And this is nothing new. 3 years ago, we had these discussions, 7 years ago, 10 years ago. So it's not new news, but it's important news. For decades, forward-thinking individuals and lawmakers have known our current fragmented system falls short of providing the necessary expertise needed to govern all early childhood programs. I am strongly in favor of the important bill. It focuses on quality government oversight and technical support in order to elevate early education for all children. This bill is bigger than just for children in the Child Development Center worlds. We're contractors. It also affects others. It also affects children at Head Start, early Head Start, district preschools, community preschools, and TANF programs. And for that, Chairman Paxton, Representative Brown, I appreciate the amendment to keep this bill alive. It is important for all of us. I feel saddened that only negative testimony was heard on Friday because you've had a long weekend thinking of how to save this bill. And you need to know there are supporters out there, very much so. Wyoming Department of Education is not scary and evil. In fact, Wyoming K-12 education is outstanding and a source of pride in our state. Why wouldn't we want that for all children, for preschool children? Wyoming Department of Education is responsible for the provision of FAPE for all children, even preschoolers. Wyoming Department of Education, in fact, the Wyoming Executive Branch supported the bill. At Stride, we know accountability is a good thing. It's necessary in a way to grow professionally. We welcome Wyoming Department of Ed data and monitoring. We welcome the results so that we can continue to provide excellent preschool, special education, related services, and early intervention Part C programming. Stride is held in high regard in our community for providing for children birth till kindergarten age what they need in order to grow. Like other parts of the state, Laramie County community is delighted in their local CDC, in the Child Development Center of Stride. And our local community members haven't asked for change. What many of the Stride community supporters don't know is how in the past 3 years, Wyoming Department of Education, along with Stride employees who came from Wyoming Department of Education and Early Intervention EIEP program under Department of Health, how they've come to Stride and we have grown. We've corrected deficiencies, we've improved IDEA services. We can accomplish so much more with the combined expertise of the 4 EIP employees working at Wyoming Department of Education with Margie's expert team of 20 plus. After years of consideration and planning and discussion, the bill will move our state forward to provide high quality early education for all children. Please do not let another year pass by without making this important commitment to improve early education for all of Wyoming's youngest citizens. We can act now. We need to act now. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate the email last week, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come down here, because I do think it's important for this committee in general to hear it is not all CDCs, and certainly it is more than CDCs that are affected by this particular bill. That being said, you are in favor of this bill. And as you are in favor of this bill, I am kind of curious, what do you see as the benefit, the main benefit of moving this particular bill forward for your CDC?
Chairman Paxton, Representative Brown, prior your announcement of the amendment, it just made good fiscal sense and responsibility. If the Wyoming Department of Education is responsible for FAPE, which we know they are, then they should be the ones to provide the oversight and the technical support. So when there is an issue, instead of working through a middleman as we do now with the good people of the EIEP unit, Department of Health, those folks and Department of Ed and us can work together in a more seamless fashion. It is efficient. They have the resources. Sometimes now the EIEP unit, no fault to them, has to first reach out to Department of Ed to ask for information or answer a question, then get back to us. It doesn't make sense. We are education. We're contractors for education. There are lots of wonderful things about the Department of Health. We, however, are contracted to provide education.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, thank you for your testimony. Anyone else in the room who would like to testify? Yes, come forward, please. State your name and who you represent, please.
Good afternoon, Chairman Paxton and distinguished members of the House of Education Committee. My name is Janine Cole, and I am currently a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing at Stride Learning Center, and I'm also an early childhood special education teacher. I strongly support this bill for all of our infants, toddlers, and preschoolers that are identified with disabilities, though especially in regards to children with low incidence disabilities. In my current position, I work with Part C, so that would be 0 to 3, and those services are served within the home or in their childcare setting. I also have a classroom at the Stride building that in both AM and PM that serves children that have hearing loss and other children as well. I also serve a child with hearing loss over at the pre-K program in Laramie County School District Number 1. And I've in the past served children with hearing loss at Head Start. All these children are the responsibility of Stride. And I would want to stress that Part B services is not a building. For the previous 30+ years, I worked at the former Wyoming School for the Deaf and as an outreach consultant for statewide services for deaf and hard of hearing within the Wyoming Department of Education. I have experience with many of the state's child development centers, in addition to Stride Learning Center, including the 2 that presented on Friday. Additionally, I have experience consulting with the 48 school districts. In my opinion, based on my 30+ years of experience, that there is no better government agency other than the Wyoming Department of Education to have direct responsibility and oversight of these programs. The existing system relies on a middleman to ensure compliance for our Part B 3 to 5-year-old age children with disabilities. This has resulted, in my experience, in inequality of services for those children compared to the services that they're receiving kindergarten through 12th grade. School districts governed by the Department of Education have historically been held to a higher standard and expectation of services than our age 3 through kindergarten. Let me see. As a result, ages 3 through kindergarten have not always received essential services for the population of deaf and hard of hearing students. They have less access to language, including sign language within an educational environment, infrequent or unacknowledged hearing screenings, lack of comprehensive evaluations, lack of knowledge and amplification systems, and limited training opportunities. Often the excuse for these lack of services has been lack of funding. The reality is the Wyoming Department has always expected school districts to use their state and federal funding appropriately in order to provide services for children with disabilities identified by their needs within the individual education plan. Historically, under the Department of Health governance, children ages 3 through kindergarten have often been provided a substandard level of service, especially for some of our low incidence populations. More money alone wouldn't solve this problem. Money without accountability would achieve nothing for our children with low incidence disabilities. Speaking to you as the only teacher of the deaf employed full-time by a child development center, even though several other centers, including our large centers, have a significant population of children identified with hearing loss. And please note that what you will be told is that the speech therapists provide those services. The reality is speech therapists often have a particular other skill set. I'm lucky at Stride that I do have a speech therapist that I work with that has significant background in working with deaf and hard of hearing children in learning to listen with amplification, and she also knows sign language. The time is now. We are talking about real children, and we're talking about their education and their future, and it's the responsibility of all of us to ensure that all children receive FAPE, a free and appropriate public education. Please consider the low incidence populations and support this bill. And please remember that Wyoming's children and Wyoming's grandchildren. I'm going to start again. Please remember that Wyoming's children and Wyoming's grandchildren. This is about them. This is not about adults and adults' jobs and adults' fears. It's about real children. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Nyman.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm just curious, what, and maybe this question should maybe be directed to the first lady that spoke. What percentage of the children that you folks deal with have health issues?
Have health issues?
Health issues. I mean, they deal with, physical issues, things like that, that they need a special needs for. And just curious as to what percentage of the kids that you deal with have health issues that deal with this and here that you guys are required to manage and take care of.
I can speak to
Come
children
forward,
with-
please. And
You wanna come?
if you want to answer, you can come forward, please.
Do I stay okay?
You go ahead. Do you want to talk to you about it?
Well, I'll just tell you that children with hearing loss, we identified 18 to 21 children with hearing loss a year. And of those, 3 are typically born profoundly deaf. But so because there's a different degree of hearing loss. And so if you. Oh, I'm
Phone on.
Okay.
We're streaming live too, so we'd
I'm
like to have
sorry.
your testimony be
sorry.
heard by everyone.
I'm just going to tell you that typically we identify through our newborn hearing screenings, 21 babies a year identified with hearing loss, with all different degrees of hearing loss. Thanks.
Go ahead.
All right, Chairman Paxton. To answer your question, sir, all of the children on IEPs and IFSPs, individual education programs, who have been identified in need of special education and related services are children with educational needs. Some do have health issues, just as you would find in K-12, where a school nurse, and we employ a full-time RN nurse, Denise Martin, where a school nurse might be part of that educational programming. It could be seizure medication, it could be G-tube feeding, it could be a variety of things, it could be allergies and needing inhalers. So we do have a nurse there to help the education team plan accordingly for a child. But we're not a clinic, and we're not private practitioners that deal just in the therapies. It's all educationally based.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Yes, Representative Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this could be a question for Ms. Cole as well. Or I am curious with the amendment going to DFS, that this bill has been vetted throughout the interim. DFS was a choice. It came back from those who were on the task force that the best, not just efficiencies, but the best possible outcomes for children would be with the consolidation with the Department of Health. That being said, can you see that perhaps the choice of the Department of Family Services as being at the helm as a better alternative than what exists today?
Chairman Paxton, Representative Conley, thank you for that. That's a little difficult for me. Yes, the consolidation's huge. Absolutely, yes. That's a given. I guess I'm concerned that once again, we're an education program and we're going to go to another state agency in the Department of Family Service that does not focus, that is not their mission of education. So it's going to be another learning curve, if you will, for those good folks to understand the complexity of IDEA and what it means to provide FAPE. They can do that with the help of who? Wyoming Department of Education, because they will still be responsible. They can work with the good folks at DFS and everybody can learn, and still they'll be the middleman. I like the concept as far as consolidation, because right now we know it is a mess. I worry about the learning curve. I also honestly worry about child find. I think our child find may suffer if we're moved to DFS, because DFS does good work, critical and important work. We know that. But there is a negative connotation to some families. And so if our IEPs, our individual education plans, are stamped with Department of Family Service, we will have some pushback. Now we can overcome that. It'll take a lot of conversations, and it will take a lot of hand-holding to reassure families that Department of Family Service is the state governing agent that employs the people of the Early Intervention Education Program, the EIEP, and it is a state oversight, that it has nothing to do with the down and dirty important work that DFS caseworkers have to do. There will be some of that. We can overcome it. Again, I implore you, we're education. We contract, our contract is solely for education. We should be in Wyoming Department of Ed. But if it's either or, I would take DFS, because all of the children of Wyoming need this bill, not just about the CDCs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Follow up, are you okay? I think we better go back to Representative Nyman. I cut him off a little early there, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have one question. Do you see, based on how you've been paid and the breakup of how the different entities have been overseeing this, would there be a loss of some revenue or some funding streams if this is consolidated in underneath DFS or DA? And for example, from workforce services, is there professional training or anything like that that is available that you guys have access to now that would end if this disappeared and went into a single entity by any chance?
No, sir, we are eligible to apply for workforce grants now, and we do. That wouldn't end. We would be able to continue to do so. Yes, our contracts would not prohibit that. I would assume the contract language would stay the same, because the EIP unit, those 4 ladies, would be the same, and it would be the same. So no, sir, there would not be any loss of revenue opportunities. All local CDCs throughout the state do a really good job with fundraising and donations and in kind, and we'll continue to do so. We, all of the directors, write many grants and requests from foundations. None of that would change. That would continue to be a necessary component if it remains in the contract.
Representative Andrew?
Thank you. Just a quick question. What percentage of your professional staff are education professionals versus therapists and other sort of health professionals?
All right, I have the one RN who could be considered a health professional, of course, although she has spent her entire career, over 40 years at Stride Learning Center in our educational setting. The rest, speech language pathologist, physical therapist, occupational therapist, early childhood special ed teachers, are all licensed professionals through the state of Wyoming. And those folks have chosen not to work in a hospital or a medical setting. They have chosen to work in the educational world. So I would say only our RN is the one, and that's questionable.
Okay, thank you. Oh, you got a follow up? Go ahead.
Thank you. So are therapists not considered health professionals?
Our therapists are considered licensed expert speech language pathologists in the realm of early intervention special education for preschoolers and babies. They do have experience with feeding and swallowing. They have a wonderful background. However, they've chosen to take their skill set and work in education. Education can also be in the home, right? With our Part C. They are there in the family's living room on the floor teaching mom or whatever caregiver there is, dad, how to best work and elicit language from their 2-year-old. The physical therapist is showing mom and working with mom on how little Trisha can navigate across the couch, sidestepping. That's what our physical therapist does. So it is not medical, but it is educational.
Thank you. Representative Nyman, did you have your hand up again? I missed you again. Okay. Just in the interest of time, I would appreciate brevity and appreciate sticking to the bill and the projected amendment so that we can, we have a couple other bills we'd sure like to get done today also. So thank you. Anyone else in attendance that would like to testify? Senator Landon.
Go Wrangler.
Welcome, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. It's always good to be back in education, and I miss you guys. Just real quickly, Mr. Chairman, I know you're short on time. I just wanted to stop by and express just a little bit of reservation about what you're dealing with here. It arrived at a pretty late hour in the interim last year. And just to represent to all of you, what I tried to broker was an opportunity to sit down during the month of December and really work on this CDC portion of the consolidation. And that just didn't work out. Unfortunately, there didn't seem to be a lot of desire to do that. This is a pretty major policy choice. It's not that I'm against any of this. In fact, I sponsored a bill 3 years ago that did a lot of this same thing, but quickly ran into the thought that, you know what, it's so disparate what we're dealing with, that it's okay to take a little time with this. This committee, for example, I'm pretty sure this is the first and only of what you know about this consolidation. It came so late, and with some of our new folks, I don't see any problem with taking this down the road a little bit and taking a special look at the CDCs out there. I respect these ladies behind me, by the way, the terrific, amazing work that they do. They just happen to disagree with those up in my neck of the woods. And when my folks have some concern, then I just wanted to stop by and share that with you, that I have concern too. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
Okay, questions for the good senator? Thank you. Oh, you go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just one quick question. In the discussions when you were you on the task force, Senator?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I was not.
Oh, you were not. Okay. I just was curious as if, I mean, during the discussions and stuff like that, what were some of the things that were brought up? Because you elaborated, we're trying to play catch up ball here and try to understand exactly what all the dynamics of this was. And so I was just curious as to what were some of the implications that we're saying that was going to be improved through this process beyond just streamlining. I mean, you know, a better job of getting kids identified and things like that. I was just curious as to kind of what some of the dynamic of that was that drove the desire to do this, so I can kind of have a better understanding if you wouldn't mind. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and Representative, I'm actually kind of where you are with this. I was on the Education Committee and it arrived to us pretty late in the game in November. And I have to be honest with all of you, I was not as up to speed as I should have been, knowing that this task force was doing this work. Commend those that were on it. I know the good representative from Cheyenne was on it. I'm not as up to speed as I want to be on this. And that was part of the reason that I wanted to broker an opportunity to sit down with our CDCs, find out what the concerns were, and then know a little bit more about what the plans would be if we moved that, you know, the entire program into the Department of Education. I just never got to a comfort zone with that. And so I wish you well. And appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you.
We thought you'd just bring us solutions here.
Yeah. I wish I had one. Yeah, good luck.
Other questions for Senator Landon? Okay.
Thank you,
Any,
Mr. Chairman.
you bet. Anyone else from the audience before I think it's probably appropriate for us to hear from the Department of Family Services. And Clarissa, I don't know if anyone's on board online with DFS, but if there is, sure like to bring them on board right now.
Mr. Chairman, Director Schmidt has been admitted to the meeting.
Okay, please introduce yourself. Tell us who you represent and what your testimony might be.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Corin Schmidt. I'm the Director of the Department of Family Services. And I appreciate the opportunity just to give a few comments. What you have before you today is a major policy decision, and the continuing conversation are also very important. A little bit about our agency. Yes, we do provide a lot of necessary services for children who are abused and neglected. However, a lot of our services are very much community-based and really are there to support families and communities in hopefully an attempt to prevent abuse and neglect. So much of what we do are eligibility programs. We offer TANF, we offer SNAP, formerly known as food stamps. Child support is a big part of what we do, in addition to child care assistance. And I think that's the component that maybe is not as recognized, but certainly is a part of this conversation. We manage and administer the Children's Developmental Block Grant, which is about $12 million a year, of which a good majority of that goes to child care assistance. Part of that also goes to child care licensing, and it's through our child care licensing that we have a lot of involvement with all child care providers, early care providers, and also in this case, the developmental preschools. To speak to a comment earlier about the learning curve and the fact that we are not an education organization, that is accurate. There is going to be a learning curve that we'll experience as we learn more with through and with the Department of Education. Certainly, I think that the Department of Health will also be great assistance. And according to the original plan, when the Department of Education was going to take on the EIEP, the staff would go to the Department of Ed. That will be the same with the Department of Family Services. So in terms of the Department of Family Services, we feel like we can take this on, acknowledging that there is a learning curve. But what we do see is an opportunity to consolidate the services, as was mentioned, to also pull in home visitation, which is offered for the 0 to 3-year-olds, as testimony showed, and also to enhance our coordination with the Department of Education, not just for children who are coming from preschool into the educational system, but also to enhance that relationship across the board. We engage with a lot of children who need special ed services through our system, and certainly the information we learned from that process will help us in other places in the agency. However, at the end of the day, this is a legislative decision. I just wanted to let you all know that we stand ready to take on the program, but also understand that there is a lot of thought about and feelings, emotions about the Department of Health, the Department of Education, and the Department of Family Services. Certainly we have, I think the previous speaker was mentioning, concerns about information coming from with the label of Department of Family Services. We recognize in some situations we do have a little bit of stigma attached, but I also agree with Ms. Wynot that we can overcome that. So I stand for any questions about the program and any preliminary thoughts we may have about the administration of the program.
Okay, questions for the, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned that the Department of Health employees that currently deal with this would come over to your division. And then would there be any Department of Education staff that would go to DFS?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Newsom. No, right now the bill just suggests that it would be the program folks with the early intervention and education program that would move. We would not, under the current draft, receive any position support from the Department of Ed.
Okay, Representative
Would you
Newsom, go
receive,
ahead.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you receive any funding, Ms. Schmidt? From, transferred over from the Department of Education?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Newsom, we would receive the dollars that are currently going to the Department of Health for these purposes. So rather than contracting as, or whatever the arrangement is with the Department of Education to the Department of Health for their Part B program, that money would then transfer to the Department of Family Services, and we would have our own agreement with the Department of Ed. And then I do believe there would be some federal reassignment of the Part C dollars to our agency.
Okay. Other questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a lot of talk of a learning curve with moving this to a different department. And I'm a little concerned that with so much talk of a learning curve, there may not be a plan for exactly how we're going to improve the CDCs once it moves to a new department. Can you help me understand, like, kind of lay out the plan and what it would look like and how we could get the improvement we're looking for? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, what would come over from the Department of Health is a lot of expertise about the current program. The learning curve would be mine. It would be folks in our agency interacting with the staff who were coming over. So there's some technical aspects of it, but the plan would be is that we would encompass this particular program in our larger early care and education programs and couch them together. The plan, as I see it, would be similar to maybe what was presented by the Department of Education in a meeting with a task force, which really looks at a lot of stakeholder conversations throughout the course of the next year, because this bill wouldn't go into, the positions would, or the program would not officially move until 2022. My style of administration really is about stakeholder involvement and lots of learning. And I think it's through the lots of learning that there's opportunity to identify change. Certainly when you have new eyes looking on a program, many times asking the questions why really get to some underlying issues that in the day-to-day may not uncover. So just by the inherent movement of the program, I think is going to prompt a lot of understanding in a different way. Certainly asking questions of the would-be former Department of Health employees gets them to be thinking about answering the questions in a different way, because there is someone new who's asking the why or to explain it. And through that opportunity, I think we can, I can't say we'll flatten the learning curve, but certainly my experience has told me that we learn a lot quicker.
Okay, other questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Clarissa, do we have anyone else in the waiting room that's asking to be brought on board?
Mr. Chairman, we do. I will admit Rebecca Steinhoff to the meeting.
Okay. Okay, there you are. Introduce yourself, please, and tell us who you represent.
You're still muted, Rebecca.
You're muted.
Oh, there we go. Now, can you hear me? Okay, thank you, Chairman Paxton and members of the committee. My name is Rebecca Steinhoff, and I've had the opportunity to address many of you as a representative of the Early Childhood Governance Task Force. Today, I share my perspective as a citizen and as chairperson of the Governor's Early Childhood State Advisory Council. Thank you, Representative Brown, for your thoughtful amendment toward compromise. My testimony this afternoon remains the same. I hope to give you a glimpse of our state-level early childhood system and of the necessity for any and all change you see fit to enact to ensure that Wyoming is the best place to be a child and the best place to raise a child. So imagine with me a Wyoming family, 2 working parents and 1 new baby. This family needs childcare to get back to work. This is a frequent reality as 63.7% of children under age 6 in our state have all parents in the workforce. This family could access the list of licensed child care facilities in their community on the Department of Family Services website. They will be lucky to find a program since 34% of Wyoming families live in an area where demand for space in licensed child care far outpaces local capacity. When the family realizes that the cost of infant care and education in Wyoming averages $9,100 per year, they may need help paying for their monthly tuition. The Child Care Assistance Program is in a different division at the Department of Family Services than Child Care Licensing, so their efforts to access and pay for a program won't be coordinated. 13.3% of eligible children in Wyoming are served by our Child Care Assistance Program. But let's say this family is lucky enough to find available early care and education and to have help paying for it. A few years later, that same family is concerned about the development of their child. The Child Development Center programs are disconnected from private child care and early learning programs in the state system and frequently are without relationships at the local level. That family may see advertising for a screening from their local Child Development Center, or they may find the Screen for Success page on yet another agency website, the Department of Health. 27% of infants and toddlers in Wyoming have received a developmental screening. If this child has a disability or a developmental delay, the family will receive services from the Child Development Center. Often, those services are part day, so the family will have to work with the Child Development Center, the Child Care Program, and their employers to coordinate transportation during the week. If the early childhood educators in the private child care would like to increase their knowledge and skills to wrap support around this child and family, they will have to find that opportunity on their own. They may be able to access a workforce training grant or scholarship from the Y Quality Counts program in the Department of Workforce Services. That professional learning opportunity may or may not be coordinated with the educational requirements for childcare licensing at the Department of Family Services. While that early childhood educator is on the Y Quality Counts website, they may discover a rich educational campaign for families with young children. This family may now have reasons to visit websites at Family Services, Health, and Workforce Services. When the time comes for this child to transition to their first year of elementary school, the family will certainly look to their local school district and the Department of Education for support and guidance. I could go on and on. This is one example of one trajectory for one child. This story isn't mine. The story for my 6-year-old daughter is different still. Each of the more than 42,000 children aged 5 and under in this state has a story, and they are each deserving of living in a state where their families have access to a coherent, unified, effective, equitable early childhood system that prepares them for the successes and challenges ahead of them. My plea is simply to improve and integrate our state level system that spans 4 state agencies and even more departments and divisions. This work began as an effort to unify and strengthen the interconnectedness of 13 different state level programs and services that administer more than $57 million per year. It also stands to improve efficiencies and supports for the 614 childcare and early learning programs that employ 4,680 early childhood caregivers and educators in small businesses and nonprofits. This work is not about individual programs, policies, or strategies. It is about a collective approach to meet the workforce needs of families and communities while simultaneously supporting families who need it to meet the developmental needs of children. And with that as a quick overview of the system, Mr. Chair, I stand for questions.
All right, thank you. Questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just have one question. Based on the numbers you just gave, about 73% of the kids out there are not receiving screenings. How would this change in the way we're handling business right now based on the information we received here last week that the Office of Special Education Programs is showing Wyoming is at the top as far as identification and intervention? What could we do through this, in your perspective, to improve those numbers, and if we could improve them, I mean, based on where Wyoming ranks right now, according to the OSCP? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative Nyman. I will say in full disclosure that probably strategies at the implementation level won't be mine to choose. But with that in mind, I would suggest that one of the challenges that I would perceive exists in the current system is that disconnect that I highlighted between private childcare and early learning programs and that child development center system. And so I think we can create some synergies and opportunities, and more importantly, perhaps local relationships between those private childcare and early learning programs where 63.7% of children in our state are likely to spend their days, and ensuring that there's a pipeline and a connectedness between the childcare and early learning programs who see children every day, who spend time talking with their parents, who have a frontline look at any concerns around development that there might be, and then creating a strong referral and a warm handoff for a family to work with the child development center. I mean, I think in some places around the state, there is a strong referral system between childcare and early learning programs, but it doesn't extend to everywhere. And so I think for us to have a strong understanding at the state level of how those systems can be connected between private childcare and early learning programs that may see a stronger connection to parents and an opportunity to advocate for those developmental screenings with the local programs, I would assume there would be a corresponding increase in the number of screenings that would exist for children around the state.
Okay, thank you. Follow up? Are you okay? Anyone else? Okay, thank you for your testimony. Clarissa, do we have anyone else in the waiting room?
Mr. Chairman, we do have other folks in the waiting room. Marcia Riley has raised her hand. I will admit her to the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Doesn't do any good.
Thank you, Clarissa. I wasn't included from last week. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, would you introduce yourself, please, and
Yes.
tell us who you represent?
Hello, thank you, Chairman Paxton and representatives. Thanks for your time today, and I will be brief so other people can speak. I'm Marcia Riley. I'm the Executive Director for the Child Development Center, Region 2, that's Sheridan and Johnson counties. Region 2 opposes House Bill 63 because it's an unnecessary bill and an unnecessary move from the Department of Health. And I know we've offered an amendment, and I'm not certain where that's going to go, so I'm just going to change some of my comments, but know that Region 2 is opposed to House Bill 63. I wanted to say that there is some misinformation about the relationship of child development centers and the Wyoming Department of Education. Child development centers follow the direction of the Department of Education related to IDEA. And so I think it should be known by the committee that I can assure you that the Wyoming Department of Education is not hindered in any way from doing its job related to special education, Part B, for children ages 3 to 5 years old. I have many examples of how that's happening, and certainly monitoring is one of those, but there's many examples. But I'm going to skip, and I want to talk about something that I've heard a lot about as I've listened to over the course of these days. I'd like to talk about collaborations. In Region 2, we have 4 local school districts, and we collaborate with them related to special education for children transitioning from preschool to kindergarten, or for other topics that we collaborate with them on. Sometimes this means going to Claremont. Sometimes this means going to KC. But we also collaborate with more than 30 privately owned preschools and daycares. And we do that to offer early intervention in those preschools and daycares where children are enrolled. We do screening inside those preschools and daycares. So in addition to collaborating with schools, we collaborate with preschools and daycares. We also collaborate with healthcare systems. We collaborate with pediatricians. We collaborate with health agencies. So collaboration is the way that we get things done. It's disconcerting when it seems like the Department of Education feels like they're being hindered from doing their jobs because of the Department of Health holding our contract. So collaborations of agencies in the same town with buildings that are close together can kind of, be challenging to people who drive 40 miles for collaborations on icy roads. So I'm going to skip to the end. Here's the last thing I'd like to talk about. I'd like to talk about the Governor's Task Force on Early Childhood. So the members of the Governor's Task Force on Early Childhood, many of them, largely the committee was made up of state agency employees. And I'm sure the task force knows that there are many, many public and private and nonprofit groups in this state doing important work in the field of early childhood. And so I'm anxious when that task force gets back together to see what synergies they come up with from all of this great work around the state in early childhood. But somehow the task force on early childhood became the task force on special education for ages 3 to 5 to advance a bill to this committee to do something that is wholly unnecessary. Early childhood is being served, special education is being served well. And so for the task force to take on the entire state of early childhood, but somehow move that to early childhood special education seems inappropriate. The Child Development Center should remain in the Department of Health. We are capable and compassionate about helping families and children who live with developmental delays. The Department of Education has a mission that is much more broad and much more different. And young children with disabilities will be overshadowed by the big voice of the Department of Education. So Region 2 believes that House Bill 63 is unnecessary. Thank you for your time, and legislators, thank you for your dedication to the citizens of Wyoming.
Okay, questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Clarissa, do we have someone else?
Mr. Chairman, we do. I will be promoting Nikki Baldwin.
Hello, can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, welcome to the committee. Please identify yourself and tell us who you represent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Nikki Baldwin, and I'm on the Early Childhood Education faculty in the University of Wyoming College of Education. My work involves preparing early childhood educators to enter the field and supporting the professional development of early childhood workforce in our state. I'm also involved in the cross-sector collaboration responsible for the successful application and receipt of the Federal Preschool Development Grant. I'm representing myself in my comments today based upon over 20 years of experience in this field. I shared my concerns regarding voices that have been missing in the debate about House Bill 63 in a letter to the committee several weeks ago. Today, I came to share some perspectives from the workforce based on my experiences with them regarding our current early childhood system. A few years ago, I completed a sabbatical researching the experiences of early childhood professionals providing home-based childcare across Wyoming. These small business owners caring for our youngest children in their homes and supporting working families are the backbone of our communities. I traveled many miles across this state and spoke with countless childcare providers about their experiences. I found them to be a committed group of professionals doing their best to provide great care for children and families who experience intense isolation, inequitable access to resources, and high levels of stress and burnout. Our current system makes it harder, not easier, for them to stay in business and provide this essential service to their communities. House Bill 63, as amended, would consolidate licensing and access to training, as well as resources they are looking for to support families. In my opinion, passing this bill is what this constituency needs. I also teach early childhood special educators from around our state whom are working full-time in our child development centers and completing their special education training in the evenings. And I can tell you that these are exceptional educators. After years of teaching and talking with them, I have found a consistent trend in their experiences. They report frustration with a system that makes it harder, not easier, to work collaboratively in special education teams and to provide family-centered early intervention and inclusive special education services in preschool. They report inconsistency in messages coming from multiple state agencies, lack of special education expertise in their program leadership, and a mismatch between best practice and program practice. Honestly, House Bill 63 as amended does not necessarily address these concerns directly. I still believe that the expertise for provision of special education services lies at the Department of Education. However, I believe change is necessary, and I do have faith in Director Schmidt and the Department of Family Services and Director Balo and her excellent staff at the Department of Education to collaborate and make this work as amended. What I believe we cannot do now is let this bill die or put this off any longer. I also teach undergraduate students preparing to enter the Wyoming early childhood workforce as Head Start, TANF, or other preschool teachers. And as they see the gaps and inconsistencies in the Wyoming early childhood system, they are frequently driven to make a safer choice and teach in the K-12 system. We are losing some of our best and brightest because we do not have a system that supports them. For many of these students, the lack of pay is not the largest influence on their decision to leave. House Bill 63, with the new amendment, provides the important governance structure to support a coherent vision for the future of early childhood education in our state. It offers reassurance to our future early childhood teachers that Wyoming recognizes how essential their work is and has a vision for the future of this field. While the impact of this bill on CDCs is important to consider, this bill is about so much more than just the CDCs. As earlier stated, there are 614 licensed home and center-based childcare and preschool programs in the state, employing 4,680 individuals. The entire early childhood workforce will be affected by this bill, and the promise of an improved system will provide desperately needed stability as they continue to face the challenges of this unprecedented time. Wyoming children deserve a system that supports the professionals who care for and teach them every day. Thank you for your commitment to compromise so this bill has a chance to pass this session. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I stand for questions.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Okay, I'm sensing that we're probably getting close to the point where our minds are made up and we're probably not going to be changed by anything other testimony. But if we have someone else out there in the waiting room that has not provided testimony that may have a direct influence on this, we would take that testimony. But I think the clock is ticking, and we see some other bills there that are probably screaming in the background because they're going to die a painful death. So would like to move it forward if we can. But if there's someone else out there in the waiting room that brings a different perspective than what we've already heard, I would entertain them also at this time. So Clarissa, do we have anyone else out there with their hands waving in the air to join us?
Mr. Chairman, Laureen Hines has raised her hand. So I've admitted her to the meeting.
Okay. Okay, please introduce yourself. Tell us who you represent, and remember, brevity is always appreciated.
Thank you very much. My name is Laureen Hines, and I am the director of the Early Intervention Program, CDS Region 14 on the Wind River Reservation. I am a certified and licensed early childhood special education teacher and have been part of our program for over 24 years, and in my last 3 years as its director. Today I'm speaking as a representative of the Shoshone and Arapaho tribes, CDS of Wyoming directors, in our opposition to House Bill 63. Of the 14 total CDS regions in the state, 10 of the 14 oppose this bill. In the event that I'm only given a brief moment to speak out, I want to ensure that our voice is heard. As a special educator and Part B case manager, my experience has taught me to carefully consider most proposals to that of an IEP. The process of referrals, evaluation, and implementation are all explained through what is called prior written notice. As such, I have to put this proposed bill into a framework that I can understand. Number one, what is being proposed or refused? This bill hopes to move all of early childhood programs under the Department of Education. Number two, explanation of why it is being proposed or refused. It is being proposed to streamline and increase access for parents and caregivers. Number three, description of each procedure, record, or report used as a basis for the proposed or refused action. This bill was developed, as you know, by the governor's task force. Number four, the description of any other options considered and why those choices were rejected. Moving CDCs to the Department of Family Services was an option, or keeping the CDCs under the Behavioral Health Division. Number five, the description of other relevant factors. The lack of collaboration between the task force and the 14 regions. Only one CDC director was part of this task force. 10 of the 14 regions are opposed to this House bill, which also includes their boards, board members, and communities. Indiscrepancies of funding between CDCs and school districts. Different regions work with 1 to 7 different school districts. My own region works with 6 different school districts. We work collaboratively with their special education and regular education teachers, including their own in-house preschools, including also 6 separate Head Start facilities on the reservation. We ask, why is this move necessary? Regions are functioning independently where we are currently housed under the Behavioral Health Division. WDE will continue to maintain oversight during this monitoring of Part B compliance, and we are currently undergoing an electronic file monitor by them to ensure continuity of IDEA and FAPE. It is the 11th hour on this bill, and we do not want to make any drastic moves with an amendment. There are roadblocks in the construction of this plan, and we simply want to encourage not moving this bill forward. As Representative Harshman once stated, as this was studied many years ago, it was determined that our programs are where they should be, and today is no different. If a roadway needs to be updated or reconstructed, then plans put together with its engineers, contractors, and machinery must all be on the same page in order for a highway to be built for efficiency. Today, we stand together as CDS of Wyoming with our respective boards, board members, communities, families, and children to say we oppose this bill. What we are not opposed to is increased collaboration and communication between ourselves and the agencies represented through the Department of Family Services and the Department of Education. This bill is not ready. Respectfully signed, Alicia Roan, Region 9, Mitch Brouchy, Region 1, Marcia Riley, Region 2, Francie Gregory, Region 3, Davey Huff, Region 4, Shauna Zornez, Region 5, Jamie Stein, Region 8 and 11, Danielle Wonderchuk, Region 10, and myself, Lorene Hines, Region 14. Thank you.
Okay, questions from the committee? Okay, at this point in time, I think the chair will exercise their authority to call a halt to the testimony, and I think we're ready to work the bill. So with that, Representative Brown, if you want to start us walking through the bill, that'd be great. No, we have
I don't think so. Mr. Chairman, I'd move the bill.
Is there a second? Seconded by Summers, moved by Brown. Okay, go ahead and walk us through, please.
Mr. Chairman, and actually, as opposed to walking you through the entire bill, because the amendment that I proposed drastically changes it, I would turn your attention to the amendment and basically, as I stated earlier, in an effort to save some time here, what we're looking at doing is taking Part B and Part C of the early childhood education process, taking it from the Department of Health and placing it in the Department of Family Services. Prior to this, Mr. Chairman, what we would have done, and just to kind of give the committee a little bit of an overview of exactly what this bill would have done and what we're doing now. Move 1 would have been Part B, children ages 3 to 5, currently overseen by the Department of Education and the Department of Health. The funding would have then gone out to the CDCs for implementation. This moves those 4 employees that manage Part B into the Department of Family Services now. That would have been a move to the Department of Education. Move 2. Part C is ages 0 to 2, moves those individuals over to the Department of Family Services. Move 3, it moves 1 employee from the department, or keeps the 1 employee that is in the, my apologies, let me back that up. 1 employee from the Department of Workforce Services then moves to the Department of Family Services for the local Head Start agencies. Move 4 moves Wyoming Quality Counts from the Department of Workforce Services to the Department of Family Services, and move 5 moves home visiting programs from the Department of Health to the Department of Family Services. Mr. Chair,
I don't think we've moved the amendment, have we?
no, we did not, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I would move the proposed amendment number 2 committee, there is two different versions or two different bills or two different amendments in there. One is mine and one is Representative Harshman's. Okay, so you are looking at number 2, and Mr. Chairman, I would move that.
Okay, seconded by Summers. Discussion on the amendment. Looks like we're about discussed out. All in favor of the amendment as presented, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The amendment is carried. Back on the bill.
Mr. Chairman, I have one final amendment.
Okay, go ahead. Would you like to move the amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, this is just a cleanup amendment. During the interim, we did move home health as a portion of this, and we want to make sure that no local or county public health nurses are moved out of the Department of Health. So, Mr. Chairman, I would move the proposed amendment, and I will make sure, actually, I know our secretary already has a copy of this. I would move amendment number 2.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Conley this time. Any further discussion on the amendment?
Question.
Question has been called. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Okay, the amendment is passed. Back on the bill.
Question on the bill.
Question on the bill. Diana, would you take roll, please?
Representative Andrew? No. Representative Brown?
Aye.
Representative Connolly?
Aye.
Representative Harshman?
No.
Representative Nyman?
No.
Representative Newsom?
No.
Representative Obermuller?
No.
Representative Summers?
Aye.
Chairman Paxton?
Aye.
4 ayes, 5 noes.
Okay, the bill has failed. 5-4. Okay, so I hope you bring us a little less controversial bill this time. Representative Harshman, I think you're up next.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I apologize. I couldn't hear what was going on, but I think we're all good.
Okay.
I can do it. I have another one to pass out right here.
Okay, Representative Harshman, we're ready anytime you are.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bring you members of the committee House Bill 165. Is it 2 years or 4 years of work? I can't remember. It's I think it's actually the last 3 years. You can see the sponsors on this committee. This is a task force that's been working this issue. There were other members, non-legislative members, Curtis Biggs, University of Wyoming. Darren Devine replaced Northwest College president when he's president of Casper College when she went to Montana. Sue Osborne, who's worked on the Attainment Council, and Jubal Yenny, a school superintendent in Albany County, were all part of that. And we met numerous times all over the state. Our first meeting was in Pinedale. And of course, our last ones were on Zoom. And so the whole idea behind this really is we've done a great job with the Hathaway Scholarship, and we'll continue to work that. And this committee will probably work some of that this interim on provisional issues, those kind of things. But, you know, the days like my dad, when you could graduate high school or not graduate high school and still provide for your family, those days are over. Can't go to the military without a high school diploma. You can't. I mean, so all this thing it's all about more training. And we've seen these things come through the legislature. Wyoming Works came through recently. Budget cuts, it was the first thing cut. First thing cut, community colleges. And now you look at the change going on in our economy and how things are happening in Wyoming. And it's really, we're trying to find a way, and we're not the first state. Many states, you know, we've really kind of copied this idea off the state of Tennessee. Tennessee Promise, and they're as red a state as there is, right? And so it's really about workforce development and about this attainment piece. And there's a lot of people in this room have worked their lives on this issue. And so that's what we're trying to do, is really bring this forward, Mr. Chairman. And I can take you through the bill probably, and then I have a couple handouts to show you really how it's paid for, and then and go from there. Really, so when the people of Wyoming amended the Constitution to allow educational scholarships to be set up as permanent funds with the Hathaway Scholarship, right? And I think that was a 2004 election, if I recall right. It's so that's in the Constitution, and this would set up now another one that'd be an inviolate fund, and we can do that. And I think that's the point of the deal. So, Mr. Chairman, quickly, as I know, if you've flipped through the bill, members will flip to page 2 are definitions. These are pretty classic definitions. Most of this, much of this bill is taken right out of the Hathaway Scholarship Bill. And you can see those definitions from academic year, certificate, cost of attendance, order page 3, degree, eligible institutions, equivalent, full-time. All these are standard kind of definitions. If you flip over to page 4, unmet financial need is a standard definition. But page 4 really starts the construction of this, this scholarship. The expenditure and the reserve accounts and the use of these appropriations are created under 21-16-1702. So paragraph A talks about the expenditure account. This is pretty standard language through A that was really, that we've used in the Hathaway statutes. You go over to paragraph B, the reserve account is, and A just talks about the earnings are distributed from the treasurer, et cetera, through the expenditure to the institutions. Paragraph B talks about the reserve accounts. A little more language here, but all of our permanent funds, you have the expenditure account, and then those funds that aren't used for expenditure go to a reserve account. And that's what we kind of talked about on the House floor today on House Joint Resolution. Now, if you have one of those down years and you don't have enough earnings, you can borrow from this reserve account. And then when the reserve account gets full, it flows back in and tips and fills the corpus. And, you know, and this is a perfect example. The Hathaway started $405 million, 648 today. That's all from those tips. There haven't been any more appropriations, all through tips and earnings. And so that's the way our accounts grow over time. And this account will do the same thing. Okay, so this reserve account, then the meat of it really is, you can see the numbers lines 16 through 19. And this is exactly how we started the Hathaway. The first 12, any excess flows in to fill up a reserve account until it reaches 12 million or an account 9% of the previous 5-year average. So initially it'll start just building slowly, 2-3 million a year, and it'll hit 12 million. And then the account itself will start growing past 100 million, and then that 9% number will kick into effect. This is an increase to 9% because it's what we're doing with all our reserve accounts. The Hathaway says 4.5. And that's about 100%, it's, you know, payout really. If you had zero return, zero or negative return, you could pay 1 full year. 9%, you could pay 2 full years of 0% return. So it's about a 200% if you think of the permanent mineral trust fund and the common school account. And those are currently at 150% reserve account. There's bills out there to move everything to about 225. And I mentioned earlier, and I don't want to get in the weeds on this, but like Utah's got 12 times. We've got basically 2 in our accounts. And we're going to try to grow these reserves as we move these all towards endowment models. Okay, so that's why that 9% number is in there. Okay. Mr. Chairman, flipping over to page 6, eligibility requirements start with 21-16-1703. And so the scholarship's created, and it starts on line 19. First of all, you got to be a resident of the state. Then you move over to page 7, 24 years of age or older. Okay, so these are adults who are out there working in residents of the state. Student has not earned a degree. Okay, and then Paragraph 4 on line 6 is all filled out, the free application for financial student aid, all those things. And because these are the last dollars in. See, the Hathaway is a first dollar in scholarship. These are the last dollars in. So we want to make sure all the federal aid that is out there has been granted, all those kind of things. And if there's a little bit up to that full cost of full-time attendance, these would be last dollars in. Line 12, they're not eligible for a Hathaway currently, and that they have registered for workforce services for any training assistance. We learned about that in our meetings over time. There's these federal programs for workforce development. We want to make sure we've used all of these for training before we put these precious state dollars into this. So it's last dollars in. Okay, so then the student who qualifies then, starting on line 19, first of all, after they're done, they have to stay here in Wyoming and work. We have payback provisions on really a lot of our scholarships. So they got to stay here and work an equivalent for a year for every 2. So I think it's 1 full year for 4 full-time semesters, or go to more schooling, it says in there, and continue on. Or on line 7, page 8, repay it. And it talks about interest rates and federal interest rates. Okay, Mr. Chairman, over on page 9, and it's just more qualifications for this. No student should be eligible equivalent of 4 full-time semesters. And there's language in here. What if you go part-time? You could go 8 part-times or whatever. There's ways that in the that's defined in here, but the equivalent of 4 full-times. Okay, and then paragraph D, line 6, student is not eligible for this scholarship if, and it starts on page 9, line 9, if they're not a United States citizen. Got to be a citizen. 17, if you're in default of any other federal student loans. 20, if you owe a refund under student financial aid programs. And then flipping over to page 10, if you're incarcerated, or if you're convicted of felony in this state or other jurisdictions, and then does not otherwise qualify under this article. So, Mr. Chairman, then on page 10, starts laying out the scholarship. You can see if they qualify, it's not more than $1,500 per semester or term for those 4 terms. Over to page 11. You can do fractions of this for part-times. I've mentioned that briefly. So the total for 4 full-time equivalents on paragraph B is $6,000 in unmet financial need. Again, these are last dollars in. And then there's eligibility requirements while you're in this training. Complete at least 2/3 of your attempted hours. So, I mean, people are allowed to probably fail a class. Right? And these are folks who are first-time folks for the most part. Keep a 2.0 grade point average. Flipping over to page 12, members of the committee, continuous enrollment. And then I think that, and then it basically points out in D, you'd be ineligible if you failed to meet those parts that I just discussed. Really, page 12 and 13 is all about administration and rules setting up and transfer students, all that stuff. 12, 13, 14, and 15 all talk about the administration of this. Payments are to the institution, not to the student, and how, timing of all that. And then finally on page 16, talks about rules and B and C and audits, and that's all about the administration of the program. Additional funding considerations starts 21-16-1706, bottom of 16, and it's on 17. This is language right out of the Hathaway Scholarship. The expenditure account is not sufficient, the reserve account fills. If somehow we go into a 10-year depression and we have no returns, and then those are going to be on a first come, first served basis to the institution. And it's similar first come, first serve with the Hathaway as well. And all of our programs have these kind of provisions. Okay, page 17 at the bottom, legislative oversight. This is not, you can read nothing in this article shall be construed to constitute an entitlement by the legislature. Flipping over, the legislature reserves the right to modify or terminate the program at any time. That's classic language of the Hathaway. We've modified the Hathaway over the years as well. And then the fund is established on page 18, can accept gifts and appropriations and so on. More definitions. This is language that's in statute now, what a permanent fund is, and it adds this Wyoming's Tomorrow to that list. And then page 19, there's one change that the committee wanted to do to the Hathaway, and it's written in the broader bill title. It says it as you read on page 1. Really doesn't have anything to do with the Wyoming's Tomorrow, but it increases that reserve amount. And you can see that, Mr. Chairman, page 20, lines 14. I talked about this earlier, where we've moved the higher ed and excellence endowment to 9%. This is proposed at 9%, and we want to move the Hathaway to 9%. It's really about the timing of the payments. And I'll show you the finance of this. We're making money on the Hathaway endowment, right? I average 10 to 18 million more a year than the expenditures. That's why we've grown from 405 million to 650 million. But we have to pay out half of this to the institutions in August, September. We just into the fiscal year, July 1st, 90 days. We don't even have the returns yet in the bank. And then another big payout in January. And so sometimes that reserve money's moving back and forth. And you may be heard in the legislature, oh, we don't even Hathaway, it's going bankrupt. We don't even have enough to pay. We're growing the Hathaway every year. Averages 10 million bucks a year or more. It's growing. That's why it's gone from 405 million to 650 currently. And so we want to increase the size of that reserve. That's it, really. And that's kind of what we're doing with all of our funds. Mr. Chairman, that's the bill. I do have this handout if you probably want to show me the money. And then I think we got folks here who want to testify. So it's 1:39. I'm going to do this in less than 4 minutes. And then I'd like for you to hear from folks. Okay. Tried to make this, again, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Tried to make this as simple. And here's the issue. You get the Craig estimates, which are 2.64%. And the Hathaway has actually earned on average 5% per year since it's existed. So if you start down at the very bottom on the footnotes, number 5, start from the bottom up, shows the Hathaway Scholarship Endowment, market value, and the scenario shows for fiscal year 2021 at a 2.64 Craig assumption and a 5% using the December 31st, 2020 market value. Then move up to number 4. The average historic return over the last 10 years has been 5%. Projections in green differ from the Craig estimates. The projections in light blue are the current Craig estimates. Okay, so then really what you have here is the current Hathaway on your left in blue. And then is this kind of a yellow color here at the top? I'm a little bit colorblind. It's yellow. Okay, that is the proposed pulling 100 million out of the Hathaway to fund this and set up the trust fund. So really, and I'll just show you where it's actually at, Mr. Chairman. If you can get in, let's start with Hathaway endowment earnings in column 4, and let's go all the way down to the bottom. And you can see in 21, 22 at 5%, it's 32 million. And then if you move over to column 5, 18 million are the Hathaway expenditures. That's in red. You see that right next to the 32 million. So I'm in that bottom green boxes. 648 million is the market value, 5%, 32 million. The spend is 18 million. The difference between the spend and what we earn, you can see 13 million. Okay, so that 13 million is going to go in the reserve and then it's going to dump into the corpus. Okay, now if we take 100 million out, that goes from 648 to 548. You can see that in column 7. So 548. So the earnings then off that reduced Hathaway, it's not 32 that we talked about, it drops to 27 million. Okay. And then that is nearly 9 million more than the expenditures. 27 million, the expenditures are 18 million. If we have 100 million and we earn the average we've earned, it's 5 million a year are going to be. So I think it's, so I think we're in great shape as far as that. The other handout I gave you was really from our community college and University of Wyoming, and it's addressed to the House Committee. I think you all received this. Is really about the 5 and 10-year attainment strategies. So I would like to really, we can open this up, or if you have questions for me, I'll certainly. I think this thing's going to go longer than 2 o'clock probably.
Any quick questions for the bringer of the bill before we go to public testimony?
I've got one, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Harshman, ultimately, I like the concept. I really do. I think you even asked me to co-sponsor this one. And one of the biggest concerns that I had on why I think it was this one. I don't remember.
I did not. I just asked the members of the task force.
Okay, so I'm curious on this particular bill with $100 million being pulled out, and I look at your projections here, but the state treasurer's office has warned 2 to 3 times since I've been in the legislature at different SLIB meetings, the actuarial soundness of the Hathaway Scholarship as is. And you're looking at removing $100 million from it to fund a different scholarship program. And so I guess, can you explain a little bit of that?
Mr. Chairman, that's exactly about the reserve account. And the reserve account is not big enough, Representative Brown, and that is the whole thing. And the Hathaway has grown from 405 million to 648. I mean, but when you look at any point in time, it's about revenue flows. And when we have to make the first payment in August and September to colleges around the state, we have to dip in the reserve account because we haven't even got credit yet for that year's investment returns that just happened in July 1st. We won't get those till October credited to the account. And so all that is a timing issue. And that's why by increasing that reserve account, that's the last part of the bill. It eliminates all that talk and then people can understand it. You're exactly right. People are saying that. Well, the Hathaway is not sound. It's not. It's gone from 405 to 648. We're cranking out about 15 to 20 million more a year than we're actually using.
Okay, other questions from the committee? Will we move to public testimony? Okay, thank you. Let's move to public testimony. Who would like to testify first?
We got 3 seats.
Aaron, if you'll
come up.
Get
ready.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, introduce yourself. Tell us who you represent, please.
Hi, good afternoon, members of the committee, Mr. Chairman. My name is Erin Taylor. I represent the Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees, and I'm really happy to be here today to support this bill. As you heard from Representative Harshman, this is a bill that's been in the works in the idea process for years, and the colleges have supported this idea for years as well. And really, this is an opportunity for us to modernize how we're using these funds and really put them to work in our state. And that's why we're really excited about this bill. So I wanted to let you know, all 7 community colleges support this. It's time to make this investment in our state. And it's not something that we're reinventing the wheel. Other states have done this. We have other programs that do similar things in our state, like the Wyoming Investment in Nursing Program. So we do have examples of how this can work and how it does work. And we've seen the successes in other states. And I think it's time in Wyoming to make that investment and allow these dollars to reach these people in our communities. You know, a lot of folks in your communities have been displaced from their businesses going out of business, whether it's from COVID or coal mines or whatever the example might be. This is an opportunity for those adult learners to build their skills. Maybe a coal miner wants to go back and become a nurse. You know, we have some examples of that happening up in Campbell County. And so I think this would be a great opportunity to allow that to happen. With me today, Mr. Chairman, to your indulgence, I do have Dr. Joe Schaefer here with me. He's the president of Laramie County Community College right here in Cheyenne. And he's got some really great news to share with you and the experience that his institution has had with an idea like this as well.
Okay, go
Thank you,
ahead,
Mr.
Joe.
Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Again, Joe Schaefer, Laramie County Community College. It's great to see you. I would say of my now over 9 years in Wyoming, this is probably one of the most significant pieces of legislation from a higher education, a workforce development, economic development perspective that's come before the legislature. And I really want to make sure that given all the other wonderful things that are happening, that I impress upon the committee of how significant this will be to the future of this state. So the Hathaway has done wonderful things to create a merit-based scholarship for the traditional college-going high school graduate. And I don't want to undermine anything that that program has done for so many individuals here in Wyoming. But we have left adults who are here, place committed already, essentially without financial assistance to come back to college when they want to pursue their higher education. In fact, we basically have to rely on the Pell Grant. The federal Pell Grant is our only need-based aid program that's really of state magnitude with that. While there's a need-based aid component to the Hathaway, you have to be a Hathaway student, you have to file a FAFSA. It's actually amazing how many students who receive the Hathaway never actually do that. And so I've shared this before over the years with other groups and other committees. As we think about the workforce of Wyoming's future and the necessity for some post-secondary attainment, and we look at that and we think about raising the educational attainment, we are simply not going to produce enough high school graduates to do it with the traditional population. I've shared the data. We could actually increase our graduation rate to be the highest in the nation. We could actually increase our college going rate to be one of the highest in the nation. And we could increase the college completion rates to be one of the highest in the nation. And we won't even come close to our educational attainment goals. And it's just simply a matter of numbers. Worse, if you follow the high school projections out, we're going to hit a cliff and our high school graduate numbers are going to drop substantially. Now flip it to the adult population. These numbers have just changed. Right now, there are over 200,000 adults ages 24 and up in Wyoming that either have some college and no degree or just a high school diploma. They're working here, they're already committed. If we get a quarter of those individuals to come back and earn a post-secondary credential, we almost hit our educational attainment goal. But you know what it's like with those folks. They come out of high school, they find that first job and they think, okay, this is pretty good. And after a while, they have a car, they have a house, they have a family, they have those commitments. And they realize perhaps the oil patch isn't for me. Perhaps the distribution centers in Southeast Wyoming aren't for me. I want to go on and do that. And they've got to essentially find ways to forego those earnings and then pay for college tuition and the expenses that come with that. And we do very little to help them forward. So one of the things that we did as this started emerging is LCCC said, we want to try to create a proof of concept for the state essentially. And we went out and asked donors, can you help fund a 3-year proof of concept for what a state level adult need-based aid scholarship program would actually work like? And the good folks at the Albogan Foundation stepped right up and committed a major chunk of funds for that. And then a handful of other donors through the LCCC Foundation contributed funds. We raised $1.2 million for a 3-year proof of concept, and we called it the Rediscover LCCC program. It's a little different than what's in the bill, but most of the aspects of the bill, at least in intent and design, are very, very similar. And I just want to share with you some quick updates on what our proof of concept has actually proven for us. So we've had 3 cohorts, 2 full-time cohorts. We're currently testing a part-time cohort to see if part-time actually works as well. The first cohort came in 2018, the second in 2019, and we started the part-time cohort this fall. We targeted adults 25 years and older. And actually a good change to this bill is moving it to 24. We get better data that way. It fits with a lot of the reporting metrics. I think that's a right move. We asked actually that the individuals had lived in the state for at least 3 years because we wanted some place committed individuals. They couldn't have earned a certificate or a degree very similar to this one. And we pushed them into very specific programs that we knew had high labor market returns and were aligned with the state, the overall state needs. Here's what was interesting. 65% of all the students who applied for our Rediscover were returning students. meaning that they were students who had already tried college, never completed a credential, and likely went to work and returned. 65% of them were, the majority were female. But this is the other thing that's amazing. 63% first generation, first in their family to go to college. And we know from the research over years and years and years that the most significant indicator of whether or not you will go to college is whether or not your parents did or a family member did. So every one of those that we get to go to college, we basically changed the trajectory for them. 62% of them went to college. We looked at the aid package and looked at what they did. And surprisingly, the students that received this scholarship actually borrowed loans at a far lower rate than their counterparts. And when they did borrow loans, they actually took out fewer loans, which is substantially significant. Their persistence rates were 12% higher term to term than our standard cohort because of the structure of the program and because of what they did. And I think the biggest thing for us, at least in the first cohort, the on-time graduation rate of these folks is 10 percentage points higher than our total population at LCCC. 10 percentage points in the very first one. Most of the graduates earn more than one credential, which means they got a degree and also stacked on a certificate on top of that. And so, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, what I would say is this works. It is the population we have to find a way to serve. And in the time where Wyoming needs to be thinking more about being efficient with the resources we have, if there is a path to more efficiently use a portion of the money that we've set aside for that traditional population to help fund higher education for this non-traditional population that we simply have not paid attention to, boy, now seems to be the time to do that. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to stand for any questions. Obviously, on and in support of the bill, this is really a significant piece of legislation.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Nyman.
I will not take much of your time. As I listened to you give that testimony, you made a really good case for putting kids straight to work, and then they'll appreciate their education more as they get out. So that's all I had to say.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay, Representative Obermueller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I find, one of the interesting provisions that I see here is that you're not eligible if you've earned a degree. So kind of have to dog it initially so that you can be eligible later on. Make sure you don't have a degree if you want to do a career change, or why is this particular piece in there?
You weren't looking at me when you were asking the question, so I was enjoying your question.
Go ahead, Representative.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, it's Representative Newsom and I had that conversation this morning, and through our testimony, maybe majority floor leader and minority floor leader can add to this too, but really we're trying to target those folks who have never been there or have not succeeded there. And because this whole thing is going to be about retraining. All of us old timers, we kind of got a job for life, a lot of us, right? We haven't changed much. Young people are going to change a lot. And so we're trying to target this group. And I think the good president talked about them, folks that have dropped out, females and first generation. They're changing your family tree. And it's going to be so important. So, but that's up for debate, certainly.
Okay, thank you. Any other testimony from the committee? Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left before we have to go back upstairs to attend to some very important business. So if somebody has a real brief comment, that would be, yes, go ahead, Lisa. Identify yourself and tell us who you represent, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Lisa Johnson, representing the Wyoming Association for Career and Technical Education. Our 200 members are the CTE educators at the secondary and post-secondary level. And we believe this bill will support our goals of getting more people enrolled in career and technical education. And that will in turn provide the workforce that Wyoming needs. So we're here to ask your favorable vote for this bill.
All right, we do appreciate your brevity also. Anyone else? 30 seconds or less? All right. Well, thank you. And with that, I think that we will adjourn the meeting and we'll take this bill up again on Wednesday. So thank you.